And today I'd like to talk about my own experience with unions, the union movement in New Zealand, and issues that are still prevalent in the context of work in New Zealand, particularly for women. The conference today is aptly called Inspiring Union Women. There are several inspiring women I would like to acknowledge today. The word inspiring, of course, is both a verb and an adjective, and I'd like to deal with the adjective first. Look around the room. To me, you are all inspiring women. You are members of the CTU, an organisation which brings together over 350,000 members in 40 affiliated unions. As CTU Women, you are the voice and advocacy group for all CTU female members. The 5 goals that you stand by are still as relevant today as they were when they were developed. And the fact that you are here at this conference means you care. I've been really impressed by some of the titles of the sessions. They are emotive, a call to action, and a reminder that the goals have not yet been reached, though some are tantalising close. Equal pay, whatever it takes. How do we win? Never give up. Inspiring Women Action Plan. I've only belonged to one union in my career, and that was as a junior doctor in the 1980s in the public hospitals. I was a member of the Doctors' Union, the Resident Medical Association. The working hours at the time for junior doctors in the hospitals were simply atrocious. We could be on call one night a week and every few weeks also required to work the weekend. There were no shifts. We worked the call days and the nights with no break and often very little sleep. It was totally unsafe. I didn't think to challenge it. It was the way it always had been. But I was really pleased when the shifts for doctors came in the public hospital shortly after I left. And that was really down to the Doctors' Union. There was another time I really wished I did belong to a union. Early in my career, I was working as a doctor in the private sector. Management put pressure on myself and others to work outside our scope of practice, something we were all very uncomfortable and very unhappy about. It was an absolutely impossible situation. At the time, we felt there was no one we could turn to. Unfortunately, the unions we did approach worked exclusively for the public sector and were unable to assist us. Because our families were dependent on us as wage earners, it would have been very difficult for any of us to resign and walk away. We were all professional women and we felt helpless. In retrospect, I can see that we could have done any number of things, but at the time we felt intimidated, bullied and not supported. As part of my preparation for this talk, I looked at the history of the union movement in New Zealand. I came across a wonderful 2009 speech by feminist and former MP Sue Kedgley. She talked about the history of the feminist movement and the Working Women's Charter, which I had never heard of. But I read the charter and the feminist movement. It was absolutely enthralling reading. Labour activist Sonia Davies was introduced to the Working Women's Charter at a conference in Sydney, Australia in 1976. She brought it over to New Zealand and the charter became a lightning rod for the feminist movement in New Zealand in the mid-1970s. The charter comprised 16 articles and I'm just going to quote a few of them. Number 3, equal pay for work of equal value. Yeah. Number 8, introduction of a shorter working week with no loss of pay, flexible working hours, part-time opportunities for all workers. And number 13 was introduction of adequate paid parental leave for both mothers and fathers. Pretty amazing stuff back in the 1970s. We're still fighting for it. Sue Kedgley had a wonderful quote in her speech from the Prime Minister at the time, Rob Muldoon, who when asked about women's liberation said, "Could we contemplate the situation where a woman getting equal pay as the breadwinner and the husband stays home and looks after the children? I don't think we could." And as a young student at Auckland University in the early to mid-70s, I was right in the middle of the feminist movement, but at the time I hadn't appreciated what an astonishing part of history it was and would be. I remember every Sunday a young bearded Tim Shadbolt held court at Albert Park opposite Auckland University. These gatherings, as they became known, were packed with young people smoking pot and dancing to local bands. And as a 17-year-old university student, I was most definitely amongst those gatherings. And I will never forget Tim holding up a dog above his head and declaring that dog was in fact God spelt backwards. We all cheered. It seemed very profound. Feminist and author Germaine Greer flew into town and was arrested for saying bullshit, and the anti-Vietnam War protesters saw their numbers swell. While I attended some gatherings, I was more interested, unfortunately, in partying than going to protests. And instead of joining the women's liberation movement, I joined the University Wine Society. And if there's one thing I could change in my life, it would be that my eyes were open to social injustices much, much sooner. Now back to the present day and my work with unions. I'd only been in my new role as Commissioner for a very short time when I had the opportunity to meet Brenda Pilot, a former National Secretary of the PSA. I didn't know what to expect and was a little bit really quite daunted about the meeting. Well, Brenda completely smashed my stereotypical image of what a unionist was. Not that I'm even sure what that might be. It was probably a collage of very bad black and white movies that were available on the TV in the early 1960s that invariably involved the boss pitted against the workers, thuggery, and the catch cry, "Down tools, boys, we're out." And what I really wasn't prepared for was the highly intelligent, quietly spoken woman with a passion for research and a steely determination to improve the working conditions of the largely female PSA workforce. Brenda Pilot is an inspiring woman, and she inspired me. My principal EEO advisor, Sue O'Shea, with her bright red hair, even brighter red lipstick, wisdom and knowledge, has also inspired me. They both made me understand that there is absolutely a place for unions. Unions often bridge the gap between employer and employee. They facilitate uncomfortable conversations to take place. They support employees and often give them the strength they need to firmly and clearly state their working rights and conditions. There are employees who do not have a voice, who do not have a bargaining power in the employer-employee relationship. Sound familiar? Well, that was me early in my career. And there should be a healthy and natural tension between employer and unions. It shouldn't be a them and us. At the end of the day, this relationship must be respectful and a win-win for all. And I feel particularly privileged to chair the Caring Counts Coalition, which was set up following the publication of the Human Rights Commission's Caring Count reports, an inquiry into the aged care workforce. The coalition comprises peak bodies, providers, Age Concern, Grey Power, trade unions and the industry ITO. And as such, the coalition is a unique tripartite of business, consumers and unions, with the Human Rights Commission being a neutral body. The coalition has been meeting regularly and collaboratively since it was established, and it has been an absolute pleasure to be part of this highly functional and motivated group. One area where unions are particularly important is in the current debate regarding raising the living wage of minimum wage employment sectors. And there's a huge amount of research that supports that decent work and decent pay pays off in multiple ways. And it won't be surprising to any of you that workers who are worried about income security perform less well at work. Higher wages motivate employees to work harder, attracts more capable and productive workers, enhances quality and customer service, enhanced reputation with consumers, reduces disciplinary problems and absenteeism, and associated with better employee health. Higher wages leads to lower turnover, reducing the cost of hiring and training new workers, and as a consequence, firms with higher wages need to devote fewer resources to monitoring. Greater job satisfaction can also result in less conflict between employers and unions. And this is the argument that needs to be sold to business, and that is the business case. Of course, the human rights case is that equality underpins all human rights. It requires the establishment of a society in which all human beings will be accorded equal dignity and respect regardless of their membership of particular groups. And the workplace, of course, is a critical environment in which human rights must live. And in the public sector, we found in our publication What's Working, EEO in the Public Service, that departments do better in terms of equality of employment outcomes for various EEO groups when that was driven and ensuring their staff from top to bottom represented the public they served. Their motivation was providing for a better service. And I'm not particularly worried that the human rights argument is not the primary driver, because I'm convinced that over time the rest will follow and there will be a genuine appreciation and understanding of human rights principles at work. And I believe the ends do justify the means in this case. Another issue attached to another inspiring woman is Christine Bartlett, Service and Food Workers Union member. Christine is leading the charge in the landmark equal pay case, which is at the crux of its principle of equal pay for work of equal value. The promise of pay equity is so very close, and I believe it will not be denied. I am convinced Christine and the Service and Food Workers Union will pull this off. The Commission recently launched a web tool called Tracking Equalities at Work, and I'd like to acknowledge again Sue O'Shea, who's done a huge amount of work in developing this really powerful tool. To see the graphics and trend lines of how women are at huge disadvantage in the labour market disturbed me greatly. I mean, quoting stats is one thing, but to actually see those stats in a versatile, interactive web tool where they can be tracked and filtered in a number of ways really hit home. And I'll quote just some of the headline stats. Very pertinent to the equal pay case is the fact that the vast majority of minimum wage earners between age 25 and 65 are women. And in a recent survey of the aged care workforce, many female carers were the sole breadwinners for their family. Female unemployment is consistently higher than male unemployment across all ethnicities and all ages. Women are paid less than men overall and in each ethnic group. Compounding vulnerabilities were evident. If it was bad for women, it was even worse if the women were Māori or Pacific. Disabled women earn less than disabled men and have lower labour force participation than their male peers. While NEET or not in employment, educational training rates have improved over time for the 15 to 19-year-old group, this is not the case for females. Female NEET rates are higher than male rates both in the 15 to 19 and 20 to 24 age group. It is particularly bad for young Māori and Pacific women in their 20s, where 1 in 3 is NEET. And women leadership in the labour market has either stalled, improving at snail's pace, or going backwards. To conclude today's speech, I'd like to acknowledge one final inspirational woman here, and that's your very own Helen Kelly. And I've spoken in the first person as if Helen's in the room. I know she's not. She's got a medical appointment, but I will keep in the first person if that's okay. Helen, I salute you. You are a battler for pay equity, workplace safety, decent work and conditions, and above all, justice for all workers. Your involvement in these issues is deeply personal, genuine, and it is clear that you are there for the long haul. You are not like a politician who makes an art of sweeping in, being seen, working the room, then exiting. You are deeply committed to the people you serve. I realised you would have been formidable in central body politics when I listened to a recent interview that you did with Catherine Ryan. In the interview, you reflected that years prior, after a particularly no-win interview, you received a huge amount of hate mail, which you were very proud of. And politics is certainly not for the faint-hearted, and the skin of a rhinoceros is a prerequisite. This showed me that you were so strong in your belief and convictions, and you wouldn't allow other opinions to deter you from your important work. In the interview, you also reflected that though you have been diagnosed with a serious illness, you are living each day, not dying. You stated that you continued to work because your job was your vocation, a calling, it was an honour, and there was much unfinished business. You were at peace with accepting your own mortality, as each of us here will have to do at some point in our lives. There is no escape from that. And when I worked as a breast physician, I met many, far too many, amazing, wonderful women who had to do exactly what you are doing. And privately I wondered to myself if I could or would be as courageous as those women when my time came. Helen, I know that all of us in this room draw strength from women like you who are steadfast in their convictions and living their lives with purpose and meaning despite difficult circumstances. And impulsively I sent you a message of support via Facebook and referred to the symbolic phrase, putting on a hard hat, a thought that has often helped me stay strong in tough times. I even offered to lend you my hard hat that I'd bought off Trade Me. Afterwards, I worried if I'd gone too far. I thought you might think I was a total flake. But I was mightily relieved and reassured when you replied to me that you had your own hard hat. Your one is a miner's hat, mine a post-World War II Brodie helmet. Our hard hats are there at the ready when the going gets tough. Helen, I actually support and share your vision of a modern union where there is a true partnership between business, workers and the government. You finished your interview saying, we don't give up and we push back. We don't give up and we push back. That, to me, sums it up perfectly. In this important work of supporting workers to achieve their rights, whether through equal pay, better conditions, higher wages, or promoting women at work, there's nothing more that can be said. Thank you to all of you. You are all inspiring women.